All right. Panelists, let's have an entertaining and informative session here. That's our objective. First things first, there is no place that the first of these national competitiveness conversations could possibly be than Tennessee. And I think it's a testament to this state and the many leaders who are here that a group of executives of this stature with companies of this importance are here today. I do want to say one word, as was shared earlier, I'm the vice chair of the council, and for those not familiar with the council, there are very few places where one can discuss policy and innovation with substance across all public and private and nonprofit and academic sectors without talking politics. And the council does an amazing job of that. So we're going to spend some time on why Tennessee throughout this conversation, but to baseline, why doesn't everyone, we'll just go quickly down, introduce yourself in sort of the context of your role, and then describe the current state of your company in Tennessee, however you want to do that, scale of people, what types of stuff you do here, et cetera. And as the CEO of Deloitte Consulting, I will share that 5 years ago, when I assumed the role, we had a few hundred people in Tennessee. We now are eclipsing 2,000, so big growth for us. Jeremy?
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you, Jeremy Papin. I'm the chair for Nissan Americas, so that goes all the way from Canada down to Argentina and Chile. Obviously, Nissan has a long history in Tennessee. We've opened the Smyrna plant 40 years ago. We added a Deckard plant about 20 years ago. We moved our headquarters for North America and the Americas from California to Nashville and Franklin, to be precise, 17 years ago. And we now have 12,000 people working in the state of Tennessee, which is the home for us. So it all started and it continues with a bright future here.
Thank you, Dan, and thank you for having me. This is Paolo Ferrari. I am the CEO of Bridgestone Americas. We're about 15 billion in revenue, similar to Jeremy's. My responsibility is North America and in Latin America, all the way to Argentina as well. And we have 3 large plants in Tennessee. We have, of course, our corporate headquarters and also a vast retail presence, and we employ about 4,000 people.
Good afternoon. My name is Pablo Disi, President and CEO of Volkswagen North America, Canada, Mexico, and the US. I am from Argentina. We have around 30,000 employees in the region. We invoice $35 billion. We've been in Tennessee since 2010, and we're moving our R&D tech center here into the Chattanooga area, so we're accelerating all the knowledge and innovation and education here to the state of Tennessee.
My name is Rob Carter from FedEx. I'm the EVP and Chief Information Officer for the corporation. We're headquartered in Memphis, Tennessee, where we were founded. We just turned 50 and just crossed over about $90 billion in revenue. We are the largest private employer in the state, and really proud to call Tennessee and Memphis home.
Love it. Okay, so we have some real Tennesseans here, making real investment, devoting real resources. Maybe, Pablo, I'll start with you. You just talked about the R&D center. Take the group through the kind of conversations that your executive team and your board are having when you're talking about investments, and what is it about Tennessee that when you're debating location A versus B versus C rises to the top of the characteristics that make it attractive right now?
Great. So let me start from the top. I always say that anybody can bend metal, but not everybody can design a vehicle. So if you have the knowledge, if you have the innovation, the manufacturing jobs will follow. So having said that, when you look at the German education system, they have a very strong system. They call it the dual system, where they take the kids from high school, they study, and then they go to work at VW or any other company for 2 or 3 hours, and they have both technical skills and degrees, and then if they want to, they can go through engineering. This is a journey. This is not built overnight. So what we found in Tennessee with University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and Chattanooga are great partners. We already have programs, but we're accelerating those programs to build more knowledge within the state. So I can always bring people from Germany, from Brazil, from any other country, from Mexico, but we need to nurture and start educating the folks here into the engineering school. And it all starts with games. You cannot convince a kid to study engineering when he's 14 or 15-year-old, just on the engineering. But if you make it a gamification, playing games, engineering, computer science, I think that's the way to go, and we need to partner with the school.
Okay, so education, the prospect of education, one answer. Jeremy, how about you? Similar industry-friendly competitors, maybe?
I'm friends with Jeremy,
I am
not friendly
friend.
competitors.
Okay.
We are friends, but
Okay.
there's a limit to friendship when it comes to the dealership. But no, I think similar to what Pablo mentioned. Obviously, we found with the state a very strong alignment in terms of making sure that the manufacturing jobs we first had to offer were being attractive and recognized, and that there was recognition for the training programs we could bring right after high school to the people, to the kids of Tennessee, and that's been working very well, and it continues to. And I was just reading some statistics about over 40% of the people in maintenance in our Smyrna and Deckard plants have gone through a TCAT program to learn and your skills and train. And obviously we've been very careful at further growing the people into management roles as well. And now I think what's interesting is to build on that, and a lot of similarity with what Pablo said is that the next step of jobs where we need alignment between universities, the two great ones we have here, but also the state and the economic development of the state is obviously on the ability to bring R&D jobs into the region, something that we're looking at. But something I would like to share with the audience is that when you have such a strong manufacturing base, industrial manufacturing base, like a lot of our companies represent in the state of Tennessee, you can think about innovation through the angle of the product innovation, and that's obviously very sexy and what is attracting a lot of people. But for companies such as ours, at least how we look at it at Nissan, we think there's a huge potential in growing knowledge around manufacturing innovation, and not the product innovation, but really the concepts of how we manufacture, how we run the logistics. And so I think that's something where Tennessee can take a step further and ahead, particularly in the context also of unionization threats and so on. We absolutely need to keep competitiveness at the top. So that's, I think, the next frontier of innovation that Tennessee should be thinking about.
Rob, FedEx, sort of the ultimate supply chain centric organization, I imagine geography and infrastructure was a huge part of the attractiveness originally of Tennessee. How has that evolved? How important is the continued modernization of the infrastructure and some of the geographic attributes and that the state and the cities have? How important is that to the future of FedEx?
Well, I think one of the most critical things about thriving innovations in marketplaces is connectivity. As I was listening to the opening remarks, including Senator Blackburn's, I believe I heard the mention of supply chain 6 times through those opening remarks. And connectivity has always been critical to the development and evolution of trade and value creation, from the Roman roads and the Silk roads on to shipping lanes. But in Tennessee, we're blessed with that centrality. We have a central location. The International Airport in Memphis is always either the first or second largest air cargo airport in the world. 6 Class 1 rails moving through the state. We have the interstates that divide the country and the Americas into an asterisk these days with centrality here in Tennessee. And, and the third largest inland port, along the river. So those kinds of connectivity assets tend to be underestimated, I think, as we look out at what makes markets competitive.
Paolo, we situated you between our two automotive organizations for a reason. They're both important customers of yours, and you can...
I'm friends with all of them.
Yes.
I supply all of them, and they love our products. So.
But Bridgestone has continued to invest in the region, has continued to choose to increase jobs here and to increase the amount of your work that's done here. What have been the couple of reasons that, in the boardroom, in the executive suite, so the folks here can understand how choices are really being made? What's risen to the top?
Yeah, and I want to give you like two angles, because I have the business angle for sure. I was privileged to move here between 2018 and 19 as first chairman of the board of Bridgestone Americas and then CEO, but also moved my wife and 4 kids here in Tennessee in 2018. So I want to make the two angles because the two are closely linked. Of course, I think what's been working well in the state and in the city is the virtuous circle that is ongoing right now, where people want to move into the state and businesses want to move into the state. And of course, they both tap into each other into what has been, I think, a very, very healthy virtuous circle. So here I am moving from Europe into Tennessee. For the first time, moving all of my 4 kids to public school, very happily so. I had 4, so I went through elementary and middle and high school, very happy. Being able to afford a very nice house. Again, I'm a certain segment of the population, I'm sure, but relatively affordable. Happy with school, with education, with everything. And on the business side, it's the same thing. Very happy with the connectivity and the connection with the universities, anywhere from technical to manufacturing to management. Of course, tax policies, extremely important. Let's not forget, not just for companies, it's great. I moved from Brussels, I was paying 54% of taxes, as you know, Jeremy. Some of these countries are crazy. So all of this is working well, truly, truly together. So it's a virtuous circle. How do you make sure that we don't lose sight of that so that it continues? And I think the virtuous circle is continue to be fed and fueled, like you said, Jeremy, if you have good sensors out in the market with companies to see where is it that are investing next. So be ahead of the curve so you begin to build that muscle early. And I would challenge, for instance, that while we're strong here when it comes to manufacturing, retail, all the things that we have talked about, if we want to reflect, for instance, on the new digital data, AI, Gen AI, which is, of course, something that we should have addressed maybe 5 or 6 years ago, how do we catch up? And I think that's probably the next opportunity.
So, Paolo, how important is for lack of a better word, the accessibility of the university community, the public sector to organizations, to businesses? When I travel around, I find very different environments in terms of the openness, the accessibility, the frankly excitement that people in the academic and public sectors have to help invest and grow through business. How important is that?
Oh, it's very important. I think we have great examples also with Vanderbilt and other universities where we have groups, teams, labs, accelerator. That's super important. But it's even more important than that because I believe strongly in the concept of the economy of ecosystems. And of course, there are ecosystems, in healthcare, like we have here as well, and the mobility one is one of the most important ones. So this is an ecosystem, of course, solutions and parts provider, large, huge global OEMs, massive fleet companies, and an ecosystem works together on converging interest and purposes and on converging platforms, whether they are business platforms or digital platforms. But we need a glue. And I think the glue is partially done by technology and data, and parts needs to be done by universities, academics, local regulators, or local institutions. And that glue is something that really helps that ecosystem fueling the opportunities of things that are good for society and good for business. And again, the glue is either technology or the institutions. And I think this is important for Tennessee because I think I work directly with Jeremy. I work with Pablo. I work with you guys directly. But I think there's a way of working together on platform. There is an additional opportunity, and I think the academics and the universities and the local institution can play a role.
So let's play out the concept of the ecosystem and mobility as applies to a market like EVs, which have implications to everyone on the stage. That market is changing all the time. Certain projections of what would happen, both technology and consumer and enterprise demand-wise have changed, et cetera. How does the ecosystem stay connected with one another as those markets change, and what might you need from the Tennessee ecosystem in the coming years as that kind of market evolves? I don't know, Jeremy, you want to start?
Yeah, well, to make it, to keep it simple, an EV has less parts, so should take less time to be manufactured, and obviously have normally higher reliability, I would say, and quality built in. And so I think it's important that we actually prepare the next type of jobs that we're going to have and need once there are large fleets of EVs, where the amount of data that we can collect and the type of customer experience that we can offer in vehicle or around charging infrastructure, or what we can do between home, office, and other vehicles and the cars that we are selling. All of this means new types of jobs. The good thing is to have universities and a government and a local government that is very supportive of both hearing what those needs are, building the programs with us, welcoming integration of discussions between many people in the company and many of their professors, giving us a chance of knowing the students, and that's what we do. I think that's what we do at Nissan with both Vanderbilt and University of Tennessee, is we want to be a go-to company for their best people and their best students and their teachers. We want to bring a sense of reality into the classroom. We want bright minds to work on solving the problems that we have, and that the more that works well, the more it's just an obvious place to continue to invest in. I'll just give an example. For Nissan to be company X in Michigan, where there are giants of autos working, or for Nissan to be company number one in Tennessee, sorry, Pablo, to be the go-to company for automotive. I think that's, for us, obviously, nurturing and working around that ecosystem is absolutely key in building a competitive advantage.
Pablo, Rob, anything you would add on the ecosystem?
I would jump in real quick because I just want to bring West Tennessee into the conversation a little bit too. So, one of those big Dearborn, Michigan companies is building Blue Oval out in West Tennessee, EV infrastructure, massive development and plant. University of Memphis is the other Carnegie R1 research university in the state, the only one not up there, but President Bill Hardgraves here in the audience, we're really proud of the work that we're doing in research there as well. But, the ecosystem, the 3 stars of Tennessee, East, Center, and West, really all need to come together and can and will and are coming together, I think, to build out ecosystems for innovation and commercialization.
Yeah. Before I start talking about ecosystems or institutions or processes, I think the people are critical. So having a governor like Governor Lee, or Don as Chancellor, or Stephen as Chancellor of University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, I think it's critical to create that bonding and that understanding of the vision going forward. Because you can have as many ecosystems as you want, but if you don't have the people, it's really hard. On a transition to the ecosystem, but I'd like to give a different angle on the electric vehicle. This is a perfect example that right now we see the pushback for consumers on electrification. And it's because the ecosystem is not built around it yet. So we do need a lot more chargers. We do need a lot more renewable energy. we do need a lot more innovation in the battery technology to make it cheaper and to make it longer range. So that's a perfect example of things that we need. I think they will accelerate with innovation in the next couple of years. And I think we're going to see the pushback on EVs for a couple of years until we, as an ecosystem, bring it to the next level.
So I want to go back to the point you made earlier about the analogy to Germany and the infrastructure, the educational infrastructure that starts way before higher ed. As you're thinking about where you make investments and where you try to influence the educational infrastructure in a place that's as important to your company as Tennessee, how do you think about whether it's worth making investments in K through 12, for example, versus some of the higher ed discussion we're having?
Yeah, it's easier for me because coming from a company, Volkswagen, it's within our culture. So it's something that I don't need to convince anybody in Germany to invest. On the contrary, they always ask me to please do more, please invest in Tennessee, please create partnerships with the high schools, with the colleges. So I think I have the advantage of working for VW in that sense because it's within our culture. And like I said before, this is a journey. We're not going to create engineers within the next 2 years, but it's going to take 5, 10, 15 years. We'll get there.
So we've been saying a lot of great things about Tennessee, so I want to make sure we offer perspective about the future. And if you want, obviously what we're trying to do in these conversations is take lessons learned and apply them nationally as well. So with this question, you can either apply a Tennessee lens or a national lens. I'd actually like to hear from everyone on this. Maybe, Rob, we'll start with you, which is to improve the competitiveness of either the U.S., if you want to take it that way, or of Tennessee, particularly around innovation. What more needs to be done over the next 3 to 5 years to take what I think you see evidence of today is an advantage for Tennessee, and in some extent is an advantage for the U.S., and propel that forward?
You know, we've been involved in the Council on Competitiveness for a long time. Fred Smith was one of the early participants, and the reason that we vested in it was to take a wider aperture about what it took to be competitive. And, you know, one of the things that we have is not even just a federal aperture, but a global aperture about, tax rates, about the way that corporations can thrive, about the ability to move money around the planet. And so one of the things that we have to continue to do is assess federal, I think we do a great job here in the state, but federal and state tax structures and incentives to allow for competitiveness, and comparatively around the world make sure that we're not hamstringing U.S. corporations and the businesses that operate large portions here based on our tax structures.
Are others experiencing, let's stay with that one for a second, the difference in tax structures globally and perhaps, as you said, state to state, region to region? How prominent is that in the discussion in the boardroom and the executive table as investments are being made?
For us as VW, we take it long term. Obviously, taxes is a part of it, but it's not the most important thing, because you look at the market opportunity, the consumers, where you operate, the talent within the states. So it's more, we always, when we make investments thinking 20, 30 years from now. So you don't make a $7 or $10 billion investments just thinking on a tax break for a couple of years. So it's a longer term. Now, on the innovation piece, we on the business side, I've been trained to just run businesses. And most of the times, we need people from the academia to bring us naive or not naive, concrete or not concrete ideas to challenge us. And from the academic world, they need our business side. So I think it's a perfect marriage between the two worlds that we complement each other.
Paolo?
Maybe, to add a perspective, tax implications are important, but for us, it's more important to make sure that in certain places we have hubs and scales, and again, ecosystem. I was reading about Oracle, like all of you guys, moving to Nashville. Of course, that's great news. And they mentioned to be closer to the healthcare hub. Right? So there's this concept that you want to be in a hub where you can have scale, you can connect to the ecosystem. And I'll give you an example for Bridgestone. So if I think about our business, there are basically three areas. One is our core tire business, where we develop, manufacture, and sell tires. The other one is our solutions business, which is our digital twin, our digital platform, tires, telematics, fleet management, and then there's our retail business. On the core tire business, our key competence from an R&D point of view is material science. Nanotechnologies, polymers, chemistry, something super complicated that not even my 15 years in the industry I still understand. But it's super sophisticated. And our hub is in Akron, Ohio. It's been there for decades. Do I see ourselves moving all of that all at once? Probably not. But on the solution side, we don't really have a hub. We actually have a hub in Europe, in Amsterdam, through an acquisition that we've done. I personally led 5, 6 or 7 years ago. And here we have competence in Nashville, we have some competence in Akron, we have some competence in California where we have made an acquisition, but we don't really have a hub around data, AI, Gen AI, cloud computing, edge computing to make sure that we do all kinds of computation on the vehicles, the connected vehicle space. So I think that's an area where it's worth exploring, because right now there's no, it's a little bit still in Silicon Valley, of course, but everything is in Silicon Valley from a technology point of view. So how do you create the conditions and again, the ecosystem around a hub where all of a sudden people move in because of those competences, we access these competences, we get together to develop a common platform. And the last point I would add is that with regards to the transportation and mobility ecosystem, the opportunity in Nashville is that everybody talks about transportation and traffic and mobility and new plans. What a great opportunity for us to contribute to that. But right now, do we have all the competencies in the area to really leverage that and have the most efficient, safer fleet management solution and mobility platform? I'm not sure. But I think that's the opportunity.
Jeremy, what more can we do?
I think we're not looking at, and I don't think businesses look at shift work that's been done somewhere into somewhere else. I think there's so much to add and that's where, at least at Nissan, we look at it today, is where do we want to add competences that we need for the future, particularly as it was mentioned by many others around connectivity, software development, the abilities for the vehicles to be in contact with other parts. And so all of this, we're looking at building it in Tennessee, and that's where or at least in the US, I would say, from a perspective of being an Asian, a Japanese-based company, definitely in the US, and then why not Tennessee? And that's the type of conversation we're having with, the states and the universities in terms of supporting the ambition and being capable of generating enough of what we're looking for. Because I think when our companies start to move somewhere, it's not 2 or 3 jobs, it's dozens or hundreds that need to build. And actually having several of companies of the same industry moving in the same way at the same time, we joked about being competitors, but the reality is it's actually very good because there are suppliers that come with it, and the suppliers need economies of scale, and the suppliers can be kind of client agnostic, and that creates a much more healthier whole value chain, I would say. And so I think we successfully did it with manufacturing, for sure. We need to keep the trucks running on the roads because, to give you an example, our Smyrna plant, there are 400 trucks that dock every day, so they can't be stuck on a highway in a traffic jam. They need the flow, and the flow needs to go. The flow is the business. The healthiness of the flow, the speed of the flow is an indicator of the healthiness of the business. And now, to this very physical reality, we are going to bring, I would say, the more digital reality. That's where our conversations in Tennessee are going.
I want to turn the conversation to the intersection of sustainability and competitiveness. All 4 of your companies have made deep commitments to sustainability in both the way you run your companies and in your future product development roadmaps, et cetera. I would surmise that you believe that sustainability and competitiveness for your company are correlated, and that and I think we might argue that regions that focus on sustainability will also become more competitive. So I think the group would like to hear from all four of you about how you're thinking about the intersection of sustainability and competitiveness in your future as an organization so that people in the region can understand it. Rob, you want to start?
Yeah, without a doubt, it's hugely important to us. We have nearly 1,000 aircraft that circumnavigate the globe. We have more than 100,000 surface vehicles, lots and lots of facilities, and so we've made huge commitments not only to improving our fleet in every regard, whether it's the efficiency of the aircraft or EV commitments that we've made, which, by the way, we do think is the future. It's just going to take a while for the infrastructure to catch up. But I think Jeremy said earlier, I mean, these are simpler vehicles, easier to maintain in the long run, but it's going to take a while to shift through that. But we've also made a $100 million gift to the Yale School for the Environment on carbon capture and on research around how best to drive sustainable carbon capture in that interim period of time as the world adjusts to putting out lower emissions.
Pablo?
Yeah, so there's no way that any business will survive without being sustainable, right? So, and I think this, again, this is a journey. Every single action will count. So some examples, we have a company called Electrify America, which charges electric vehicles. 100% of that energy comes from solar panels, right? So we're working with all the dealer network to put solar panels on all of the roofs. So you need to take a big problem and tackle it in smaller projects and make progress. When you look at the vehicle fleet, when we go to combustion engines, you can, depending on the vehicle, on the engine, you can spend 250 CO2 per mile to 150. There's a role for the hybrids. There's a role for the plug-in hybrids. There's a role for the electric vehicles because they all reduce CO2 versus the internal combustion engines. So again, you don't need to go from 250 to 0 tomorrow because it's impossible. But as long as you reduce it 30%, 40%, 50%, any reduction will be welcomed.
Is part of the theory that you would hope, or maybe you're seeing, that, and this gets to the ecosystem point, that startups in areas like sustainability that are driving innovation on some of these topics because of the proximity to industry like to auto, that you'll actually create in a way that supplier networks used to, and still do relate to automotive, that will happen in this ecosystem as well?
That is happening every day. I mean, I get people knocking on my door, probably Jeremy does as well. I'll tell you one example, which I think it's really ingenious. There's some companies that, they're trying to charge the vehicle to the power grid in your house and look at how much you get paid and how it's efficient for you to provide electricity from your vehicle into the house or into the grid. And you get a financial reward, and you reduce the CO2. So this, if it doesn't come from a startup, is really hard to come from an OEM. So I think there's a lot of smart people out there, and we need them to contribute to the reduction of CO2.
But I do, to build on that, I do think, again, speaking to Tennessee, there are so many, the innovation may come from startups, and more often probably comes from startups. Now, what larger companies have to offer is, we don't necessarily give capital. There's plenty of capital available for a good idea, but we can be helping on solidifying revenue streams or making a very concrete road to scale, which is basically going to be the make or break of any startup. But here in Tennessee, the beauty of what we have around, say, the charging network infrastructure, everything we can think about clean energy, is the fact we can work with TVA, we can work with Oak Ridge. There are projects that are very, very real, concrete POCs of how does everything that Pablo has mentioned work? How do we send electricity back to our homes? How do we implement smart charging that is economically a benefit? How does TVA that can produce electricity through the night actually have an output for that energy being so difficult to store and yet being produced. So that's, again, something that's the beauty of this state in particular today, is that there are the building blocks of the future around sustainable energy are all here for grabs and for cooperation. And again, we're talking about such a big and bright future that cooperation between the companies to achieve that is an obvious way forward.
Jeremy, you mentioned Oak Ridge. This is sort of the first time we've talked about national lab infrastructure. How valuable is that asset to Tennessee, and how important it is for private sector to activate the innovation that happens in national labs?
Well, I mean, there are very smart people, so that already is, just the advantage of being able to tap into that knowledge. And then obviously with them comes, federal funding, federal interest. That is also one that is very interesting in terms, again, of scaling this and finding solutions that work much beyond the project that we can work for. So I think that's what Oak Ridge presents. But what we like with them is the fact that they're so open to testing and trying and learning from success or failure in order to actually build this future. Similar with how TVA is approaching this future today.
Paolo, how about you? This intersection of sustainability and competitiveness, and how Bridgestone's thinking about it?
Yeah, it's very important for us to the extent that our vision is to be a sustainable solutions company. So it's even in our vision. We actually believe that what's good for society is good for business. That's a little bit our motto for the last several years. And just to add, I would say, an additional angle to what the gentlemen have discussed. So for us, sustainability in our product, of course, is super important with two angles. One is to make sure that our tires have the highest, the lowest rolling resistance as possible. So of course that means less drag and less fuel consumption, as well as the highest material circularity number, which means that most of the material now, over 50%, will be recycled. So this is what we call our new Enlighten technology. So it's a technology that allows us to keep on pushing on our key, I would say, traditional indicators: traction, wet braking, dry braking, but adding this sustainability component. And I'm saying this because this brings along more complicated manufacturing, more sophisticated manufacturing. So when we talk about investment in manufacturing in Tennessee, it's not just capacity, but it's actually super sophisticated new machine, in our case from mixing to tire building to curing, that requires also skills that are not just mechanical, but very much, again, around material science, also software engineering when it comes to this machine. So that's a great opportunity for sustainability. And the other one that I'm actually even more passionate about is about the connectivity, again, of the tire, the digital twin, to the connected vehicles and to the fleet management. Because the impact of EVs is important. But even within that, until we make that transition, there will always be internal combustion engines. So the value of the data flows between the vehicles, the tires, and you guys know the huge impact that the tire has on the performance of a vehicle has a huge impact on CO2 emission reduction, on Scope 3 emission, and so on and so forth. But as I said before, it cannot come just from Bridgestone. We make our tires, we have our digital twin, but we need to have access to the connected vehicle platforms, to the fleet management platform, and that's the ecosystem that comes together. And again, data in the oil, and from a competence point of view, is very different. It's about data, AI, Gen AI, algorithm. And I think that the next wave for me in Nashville and Tennessee needs to be that one, because it's going to stay for the next several decades.
There's a lot of beauty in that relative to what the stakeholders in the audience might invest in over the next 3 to 5 years, given what you need. For others besides Paolo, what would you encourage the community, the R&D community, the academic community? What do you hope we get inspiration and innovation from that's going to help your businesses, not just next year, but 3, 5, 10 years from now? I don't know. Rob, you want to start?
Yeah, I'm going to kind of finish where I started, and that's really with supply chains and the fact that I barely talked about digital at all, and I need to do that because one of the things that happened when we invented the tracking systems was we began to build a digital twin of every movement on the planet. So we have a very clear set of insights to not just the things that are moving on the planet, but the capacity of the supply chains that we operate, how much air are we moving or flying, and making supply chains smarter for everyone with digital technology and the efficiencies that are still out there is hugely important, and it's a worthwhile investment space because supply chains have a lot of what we would call lagniappe in them. They've got a lot of slack that needs to be pulled out of them in order to make a more sustainable, more profitable, more efficient business, and the networks that we operate are being modified most significantly by digital impact overall.
Pablo?
Yeah, I would suggest to focus on applied science, right? Because you have the schools and the business. And I remember last year, we done the University of Tennessee in Knoxville looking at some composite materials that the kids were studying that would take weight out of the vehicle, out of one of the doors. In that way, you reduce the weight of the vehicle, you have less materials, you have less CO2, you become more competitive. So the more ideas on applied science that we get from the system, from venture capital, from the schools, the better off the entire ecosystem will be and the stronger Tennessee will be.
Jeremy?
Again, I'm very aligned with Pablo. I think we've got very good examples with the Tennessee Centers for Applied Technology. We've got, people who are super ambitious into investing in themselves in the next, in what comes next. Recently, we offered classes on artificial intelligence and Gen AI, bringing it into work, into, I would say, indirect jobs, support jobs. We had 3,000 people connect into 2 times 90 minutes, I would say, discussions and teach-ins. And that's not because people are worried of losing their jobs. That's because people are super interested in upscaling and investing in themselves and changing the content of their jobs and having even more of an impact and value add. And so, yeah, I would more than ever encourage everyone of thinking through what we've been mentioning around digital and artificial intelligence applications. But I would also encourage those who are thinking always innovation through the product to think about the innovation through the flow, the logistics, the what happens in the plants and so on, because it's less sexy, but the business appetite is huge.
Yeah, well
immediately here in Tennessee.
Paolo, anything to add?
Maybe just linking to my first comment about making sure that we keep on sensing the market, because I think we've been talking about digital AI, Gen AI, as if it were the future, and the truth is it's the present. Right. So really thinking about what is the next wave or the next 10 years. We do it as a company, of course, sensing functions here and there. I think the universities and the community needs to do the same. So investing early on, or at least seed competences, courses, and things around what's coming for the next 10 to 20 years. And do it now, even though it's an investment with an uncertain return, but it's more expensive to catch up than it is to be ahead of the curve.
Speed round to close. Complete the following sentence, all of you. The reason I'm optimistic about Tennessee's competitiveness for the future is?
Momentum. We've got tons of momentum, and momentum is a flywheel, and once it gets rolling, it's hard to stop. Let's keep going.
The people, the leadership, and the culture of Tennessee.
We know how to manage the virtuous circle.
Again, the people and the culture for sure.
I love it. All right, I'm going to end this great panel where on behalf of the 4 of us to the left on stage, to congratulate Rob, who is soon to complete his career at FedEx. He'll have served as the CIO for 25 years of one of the most influential companies in the world. He's a Tennessean through and through, so congratulations and thanks for your contributions to the competitiveness of the state.